Okay, let's go through a few examples to try, and I want you guys to try to identify which of the four types of operant conditioning. Is it positive or negative, reinforcement or punishment? So positive punishment, negative punishment, positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement. Okay, here, one, Fred gets a speeding ticket. So let's assume that the speeding ticket causes Fred to stop speeding. So it reduces that behavior. So this is an example of positive punishment. It's punishment because it's reducing the behavior, and it's positive because it's adding something. So he's getting this speeding ticket. You could think of it as negative punishment if it were his driving privileges were being revoked. But if we just stick to the what the prompt says, getting a speeding ticket is positive punishment. Emily's professor compliments her on her writing ability. So think about, what is the consequence of that? Will that increase or decrease Emily's behavior? So in this case, it's a positive reinforcement. It's reinforcement because it should increase her writing and her working for her professor. And it's positive because her professor's compliment is adding something to the situation. Leon goes to the health club for a rare workout and pushes himself so hard that his entire body aches and he throws up. Okay, so think about that. What is the consequence of that behavior? Do you think that he'll increase his going to the club, or do you think that he'll stop going to the club, or will reduce his behavior? So I would say this is positive punishment. It's punishment because the fact that his body ached and he threw up should probably reduce the likelihood that he'll keep doing that behavior. And it's positive because it's an addition of painful experiences, his body aching and him throwing up. And so that added consequence, that added experience is going to decrease the likelihood that he'll behave in that way again. Linda buys her daughter a candy bar so that she will not be embarrassed by her daughter's temper tantrum. Okay, so if you think about that, is that going to increase or decrease the behavior? So I would say this is positive reinforcement. And so from the daughter's perspective especially, so the mom is giving her a candy bar. And so, well, let's see, actually. Yeah, so it might cause her to stop the temper tantrum in the short term, but because the daughter engaged in the temper tantrum and then was given a candy bar to stop, that should probably reinforce that behavior, and she'll keep doing a temper tantrum to get the candy bar. It's kind of like the example of the kid reaching up to his parent to get picked up. That behavior, like when you pick up the kid, it's actually reinforcing that behavior. So by giving the daughter a candy bar, she's actually reinforcing the behavior of her daughter's temper tantrum. So this is from the daughter's perspective. If you look at it from the mother's perspective, it's, I guess, a negative reinforcement because the mom has to pay for a candy bar so that to stop the temper tantrum. But when looking at these on your quiz, don't try to overthink the situation. Just read it for face value. And so if you look at this, it's like the addition of a candy bar for her daughter's temper tantrum. And so try not to overthink it and just look at the scenario for face, what it says on its face. Okay, last example. So George shoots up heroin to ward off the symptoms associated with heroin withdrawal. So think about what behavior is being, like, is this going to increase or decrease the likelihood of that behavior in the future? And why is it going to increase or decrease that behavior? Is it because it's adding something or taking something away? So here I would say this is negative punishment. Sorry, I think it's negative reinforcement. I'm sorry, that's my mistake. So George shoots up the heroin to ward off the symptoms associated with heroin withdrawal. So by taking the drug, it removes the negative feelings. And so it's going to reinforce the behavior, but it's negative because it's removing the pain. So my apologies, this last one is negative reinforcement. And I'll fix that before I post the slides on eCampus, so you'll have the correct version on eCampus. Okay, so what are some other types of learning? So we talked about classical conditioning and operant conditioning, and both of these are associative learning. And so it's classical condition is learning by just associating a stimulus and a response together, or it's associating two different stimulus together so that one stimulus produces a response. So that's just like an automatic associative learning, whereas operant conditioning is learning the consequences of your behavior. So learning whether something is rewarded or punished, and then whether that's going to increase or decrease the behavior. And these are both based on the behaviorist approaches that we learn based on our environment. And so the behaviorists believed that people were completely shaped by our environment, and they kind of just neglected a person's internal mental world. It was all about the environment. But there are other types of learning. So social learning is like observational learning. So this is learning through observing and imitating others. Insight learning is discovering the solutions to problems by using one's mind. And often insight learning comes in kind of a flash of insight, and it's just like mental learning. And cognitive learning is like probably what you are most familiar with as a student, things like studying and remembering, and just reading your textbook. That kind of learning is cognitive learning. So let's think about observational learning first. So I want you to think about the time that you tied your shoes for the first time. How did you learn to do that? Did someone simply tell you how to do it? Did you try out random motions and get rewarded for the right ones, as operant conditioning would propose? Chances are you learned how to do it by imitating another person. So chances are you watched somebody tie their own shoe and then you followed up with them. So observational learning is learning that occurs when a person observes and imitates another's behavior. This is often when people look up to some role model or authority figure, could be a parent or a teacher. Also, younger siblings learn from older siblings, and so as younger siblings grow, they look to their older siblings for how to behave and how to act. We also learn from our peers, and so you could see this with peers picking up on their friends' mannerisms and figures of speech, because we learn how to act from associating with people. So there's more to learning than just associating one thing with another, as classical conditioning would suggest, or doing something and then being reinforced for it, as operant conditioning would suggest. If this was the only way that we learned, it would take us a very, very long time to learn things. And we couldn't benefit from what other people learned before us. We'd have to reinvent what others have learned over and over again. So it's much more efficient to learn from others. Also, observational learning starts at a very early age. So to show you this, I'd like you to click on the link called Baby Dancing, and this will show you an example of a very early age of observational learning. And so I'll go ahead and stop this recording, and so after you watch the Baby Dancing video, come back to the Learning number 6 video.